What's going on, guys? We are back. The RLCS is back this weekend. Top 16 of North America. The beginning of Split 2 will be played out, but there is a rule change that will come into effect for Split 2 based on Split 1. So teams, and if you're fans of teams, you got to watch out for this on Friday streams. The placement matches, the old placement matches, are no longer there. You will now be determined based on your initial seed coming into the top 16 to determine how you place in your group. So I'll explain that a little further here in a moment. Let's bring this up, and I have the wrong page up, so my bad. But here we go. I'm going to bring this one up. I'm going to just slide it over for you, and then we'll slide it back. So from John, aka always the MVP of the Reddit for Rocket League Esports. But basically, the RLCS rulebook will be updated with adjustments to the GSL groups and GSL groups final placement logic for Open 4 onwards. GSL groups will no longer have seed matches played out. This means the 2 rounds in both the upper and lower brackets. An example of Verizon can see in the screenshot below, yada yada. GSL groups final placement logic with the removal of the seed matches. Each group's first and second seed and third and fourth seed will be determined by comparing their initial seed going into the top 16, basically, for the 2 advancing teams. So what does that mean? I'm going to slide this back over so you can see my beautiful face. There we go. All right. Let's look over here. So what does this mean? Basically, in the groups, so this one is from Open 1 last time around. I'll just show you Group A because it's a little easier to show than trying to show the whole screen because it takes up a lot of the space. But basically, the Space Station and deleted matchup will not be played. Same thing with the Genji Energy matchup. A couple reasons why I like this, and then a couple reasons why I don't, or the pros and cons of not doing placement matches. First, the pros. The placement matches really felt meaningless most of the time. It's the only match in the entire tournament from top 32 on, or actually the entire tournament from top 2000 on, that did not matter in terms of advancing or being closer to elimination, right? It did matter where you were placed in brackets, and I think we'll get to that on the con side. But it was the only match in the entire tournament that really didn't have any high stakes, right? And I feel like players felt that, right? We saw this on the field. Like even team streams and stuff were just like, it's placement match, whatever. We're going to move on. We're not too worried about it. There was a couple times, right? If a good team fell down, like an Energy or something, then it was very important, right? To win your lower bracket placement match so you didn't have to play Energy. That does happen from time to time. But overall, it did feel a little bit meaningless at times, right? The other case of placement matches mattering or not is like more times than not, if you won your placement match, well, then you're supposed to win your next match, right? And that happened probably about like 80% of the time, like if not more. So I don't have the full math on it. I think it happened once in Europe and then once in NA, but I guess that's 1/3 chance, so about 33% chance or so. But that was only once in lower and once in upper. Like, I'm not really sure. Like, I didn't calculate it out. If someone wants to do that in the comments, feel free. But I'm going to say about 20%, right? 20% of the time, if you won your placement match, you lost your next match on both lower bracket and the upper bracket, right? So then it turns into, well, if I win the placement match, I should win my next match, right? So then why play the placement match, right? Because if you won the placement match, shouldn't that be the match that just counts and you just move on? If you lose your placement match and then you win, then you're like, did I really deserve this, or did I just get lucky, or did I just have one bad match when it didn't matter, and now I had a good match when it did matter? It comes into like a weird conversation about that. The cons are, well, if you have the top 2 teams and you're playing a placement match, those top 2 teams should still advance, right? So you're like, all right, I get to play them here. It's not a big deal if we lose. We're the 2 best teams, right? We're going to win anyway when we get into the upper bracket quarterfinals. I would oppose that by saying, well, the upper bracket quarterfinals, you have 2 lives anyway. So if you did match up here as the top 2 teams, very likely you will meet in the grand finals anyway, or you should. If you're the top 2 teams, obviously your percentage of that happening is going to go down drastically compared to if you're on the opposite sides of the upper bracket quarterfinals. But it's still more times than not, if you are the best two teams, you should meet in that grand finals, and you have 2 lives in the upper bracket quarterfinals. So I think the upper bracket placement matches were even more meaningless than the lower bracket ones. Now, the lower bracket ones were the thing I didn't like about the lower bracket placement matches is a lot of times that they were rematches. This happened a lot, as you can see, like in this example, and I didn't put this one out there on purpose, but we have Energy and Gen G was a rematch. 9 Lives and Team Evo was also a rematch. So that is going to happen a lot, and that always feels weird to have a rematch like this early into a bracket. So I didn't really care for that, because the whole point of doing groups of 8 is so you don't have rematches. That's really the whole point of this, instead of groups of 4 for GSL, because groups of 4 is abysmal. I hate it. I hate it so much because it just turns into the 2 and 3 seed matchup. Really does not matter because they just play again in the lower bracket final. So having rematches this early when it's meaningless anyway, it just felt odd, right? But it did allow teams to, if I got a bad draw like on my lower bracket matches, there's a chance I can move on because, I'm going to play the best team in the placement match, or I want to avoid the best team if I'm on the other placement side. And that did matter at times, for sure. But it still just felt like a weird spot in this entire tournament, if this makes sense at all to any of you. There's another huge con, and I think this is not necessarily because the placement matches are gone. This is more of how we seed out of placement matches. And I want to bring up this. Buckhole seeding for 3-0 teams, I think, is absolute trash. It doesn't make a lot of sense. We talked about this in previous videos. Let's look at Open 4 here really quick for North America, and I think that just does not make any sense at all. Energy, they go 3-0, 3-0, 3-0. They literally have a perfect Swiss, yet they will be a 3 or 4 seed. I think that they'll be the 3 seed technically in the open part of the bracket, or the top 16 part of the bracket. Gen G goes 3-0, 3-2, 3-1. Yes, their opponents are tougher, but they still lost 3 games on Energy, who had no control over this, went perfect, and yet Energy will be the 2 seed. And we obviously know Energy is a higher seed in general, and honestly, that's probably why they got the easier matchups, right? Because they were the higher seed coming in, so you get easier matchups because you're the higher seed, but yet that punishes you when you leave Swiss, right? Which doesn't make a lot of sense, in my opinion. So if you don't know what buckholes is, I'll explain this really quickly because I should have done this at the start. Buckhole seeding is basically a game differential, does not matter. So just take that out of the equation. It's just your wins and losses. Then it goes to your strength of your opponent's wins and losses. So where do they place at the end of Swiss? So for instance, let's look at Energy here real quick. They played SOS, who went 2 and 3. They played CMK, also went 2 and 3. So right there, you're -2 under 500, right? In terms of matches won and lost. And then they played Pirates on a Boat, who went 3 and 1. So that's +2, +2, -2, you equals 0. So that's where you get your 0 buckle score. While Gen G played SimTalk +1, who went 3 and 2. So that's +1. Played Na, 3 and 2, +2. Played Space Station, 3 and 1, went +2. So they went +4. Now, there is an argument that Gen G, it's like, they had a really tough road, right? And they're of course going to lose games. That is fair. I still think it's I would much rather have it be in my own control over if we go perfect, we should be the top seed. But I can see that argument for sure. That is a con of just doing it off game differential. But I still would much rather have Energy here be the 1 seed. Because again, I feel like they get punished. Generally speaking, if you're a high seed going into the top 32, you're going to play easier opponents because you're a higher seed, which is going to punish you coming out of Swiss, which doesn't make a lot of sense in my mind. Now for 3 and 2s, I don't mind it. 3 and 2s, I think it makes a lot of sense to seed off buckholes because that's where you play a lot of different opponents and all this stuff. So that I can see. That I think it does matter. And I think I made a video about this, I'm pretty sure, where I was like, all right, 3-0s, suit off game diff. 3-1s, let's suit off how long you stay in the upper bracket. And then 3-2s, do it off buckles. And I think that would be fine. Moving down here, it's the same exact thing for the other part of the top 32. The Ultimates, obviously a top seed. coming in, go 3-1, 3-0, 3-0. Got the job done, right? Only losing one game, 9-1. Complexity, 3-1, 3-2, 3-0. Yet they are number one. The Ultimates are number two. Again, Ultimates get easier opponents. Because of this, the only time they don't is the very first round, is you play the 9 seed. Basically, in buckholes, you play 1 plays 9 seed, 2 would play 10. So Complexity would play the 10th seed here. They would play the 9 seed. So that should favor Ultimates. But in the next round, then Complexity has a harder opponent. The Ultimates get the 8th seed, so on and so forth. So it's like... And then in the final round, it should also be the Ultimates get the easier opponent and Complexity gets the harder opponent. So Complexity should come out probably ahead, right? So again, I'd rather game differential, but in this case, the Ultimates Energy, they will be the 3 and 4 seeds going into this bracket. And that's where the placement matches get a little bit burned, because it is based on where you seed out of this Swiss. And I think it's very inaccurate to do buckholes for the 3-0 teams. So I think that does hurt teams. Luckily, in a way, this kind of works for Energy and Ultimates. As long as there's not another upset, they won't play each other. But again, like if they are the two best teams, even if they do play in this upper bracket quarterfinals, they should be able to advance through and meet in the grand finals anyway. Because really, like all that happens in the upper bracket quarterfinals, yes, it's an important game, yada, yada. It's not that important. Let's be real here. You lose, you're 1 round lower than the other team, right? Like if Energy wins here, they would be up here, and Ultimates, like if they lost here, would be here. They only have to play 1 extra round. It's not the end of the world, and then they would be on opposite side of the brackets anyway. So, like if you're a top 2 team and you wind up playing a top team, I don't think it matters that much. In the lower bracket, it matters a little bit more, but also the seeding is a little bit better, generally speaking. As you go deeper, like into buckholes, it is better, which is why I think buckholes is great for like long competitions in chess. Not so good in a 5-round Swiss, but here the seeding's a bit better, but also you're in the lower bracket, right? You just got to make a run. There'll be times when you have tough competition in your first run of the lower bracket, but I feel like that's any bracket, no matter what you do. So placement matches would help a tiny bit. Like I know I saw someone say, well, with GK, they began this magical run because they took down Vitality in their placement match. Well, I'm like, well, they would have probably won their lower bracket round 1 anyway then if they can take down Vitality in their placement match. So it would have been the same exact thing. And I think that's the hard counter argument of like, if you win a placement match, you're supposed to win again next, so why not just play the game next before and not do the placement match, if that makes sense. But that's pretty much the arguments for and against. Obviously, I'm more for not having placement matches. I just think we still have to work on the seeding for the Swiss in general, because I don't think buckholes is the answer, especially for the 3-0 teams. I think round 5 teams or 3 and 2 teams, yes, makes perfect sense. I just think the 3-0 teams should be more awarded for their 3-0s that they get, like the Energies going perfect in Swiss and not being the top seed, just seems wrong, right? I think most would agree with me on that, but that is the only real big rule change that's coming in. Now it really is just double elimination throughout this entire tournament from top 16 on. It's just double elim until you make it to top 4. Once you make top 4, you then have 1 life. That's really all this tournament is. We can dress it however we want with GSL groups and all that stuff, but now it really just is double elim into top 4. You have 1 life. So just keep that in mind as you're watching your teams on Friday. The streams will be a little bit shorter. The maximum amount of games you can play now is 3. And for the good teams that go 2-0, they will only play 2 matches. So keep that in mind for the team streams on Friday. But that's it for me. Thank you guys for watching. I will actually be on the NA show on Saturday. So if you want to check me out, I'll be doing a little bit of casting there. Just a fill-in in for the day for someone. So I won't be there normally. I'll normally be on the European side. But I'm going to come in and do a little casting on the NA side and see how it goes. So thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.